Ritter Communications presents the NEA Varsity Podcast, brought to you by Tubetown and NEA Sports. Here are your hosts, Marcus Carlton and Ryan Fletcher.
Hey, everybody. Marcus Carlton and Ryan Fletcher back here for episode 11 of NEA Varsity Podcast.
Yes, sir. Glad to be back for another edition.
Man, we had another pretty good night of football. You guys had the Crosstown Showdown. We had Westside basically playing to stay alive for the conference title out at Warrior Stadium, and both of us had pretty good games this past week. Why don't you lead us off with a recap of the Crosstown Showdown?
Well, it was a good game. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Valley View was reeling from an injury to their best player, and Connor Watson suffered a broken hand in the week prior against Greene County Tech on what we'd call a freak accident. His hand came down on a opposing player's helmet and caused that to break. And so he's out. Wanted to play that night. Obviously, there's no way, as he was at the ball game and had it all wrapped up. And then I didn't pay a lot of attention if it was a cast or what, but he was in no way he was going to play. Said he'd like to be back the next week, which would be this Friday night against Batesville. That's not going to happen. The push is for him, hopefully, to be back for the playoffs. And, it's going to have to be a heck of a recovery. But, stranger things have happened, and they need him because, the offense, he's their playmaker really on both sides of the ball, he and Travis Graff. And they were without him, so they wanted to rely a lot on Travis. And Travis, he came up limping early in the football game, and I never saw him on offense again. And so really Valley View's just really banged up right now. With that being said, they still did a really good job of establishing the run and running the football. JT Chastain showed up for them. He's a 5'8", 200-pound senior. He really had a good, solid ball game for him, probably was the player of the game. And when they got to the goal line, Jacob Walzonia scored a couple of times on some runs. So two guys that are tough to bring down. And then we saw several guys for Valley View in that sophomore class. Lane Raines played some out of the tailback's position, and young man named Becker for them. He has several brothers, and I have all of them here at school. So I'm drawing a blank on the kid's first name, Caden, I believe. But got to see some of the youth. But at the end of the day, it was the Valley View defense that, as always, that held true and did so well for them to, ended up winning them that ball game. And that was Grayson Becker, by the way. Caden's his brother. That being said, the final was it was a one-possession football game, and I'll tell you, Nettleton had ample opportunity to win. Final was 20-13, but Cade Carter, he really struggled the other night throwing the football. There were probably 4 or 5 times where Nettleton had their receivers had a man beat by a step or two, and he just was continued to overthrow the entire night. And Valley View had some turnovers that kept Nettleton in the football game as well, but it was a good game to watch. Truly a battle for field position most of the night, and never saw just a ton of big-time plays that were made as far as big runs or big passes and that sort of thing. It was a lot of third down conversions and just what I'd call for a baseball term small ball. And Valley View ended up winning, and they remain undefeated in conference and in their regular season. And now they go Friday night at home. They host Batesville, and I think it's going to be a good ball game. I honestly, even though Valley View's undefeated, Batesville got a lot to play for as well. And with the way Valley View's banged up, I think that's going to be a really close game. I think it's almost a pick 'em. So, But that being said, Nettleton eliminated from any hopes of making the playoffs. Just not been the season that Coach Hampton wanted. In listening to him, he had a lot of inexperience and youth coming into the season, but injuries have also played a role in the way the season has gone as well. So a lot of question marks for Nettleton moving forward, and it'll be interesting to see how he rebuilds in that program. But Valley View's got it going on right now. Like I said, that very, very fun for us to cover, and looking forward to hopefully broadcasting their first playoff game in the year.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, it the bullseye grows a little bit on Valley View coming into this final week matchup with Batesville. And Batesville and they have a very tradition-rich program. They would love nothing more than to take away the goose egg that's in that right-hand column for Valley View in the last game of the season. If they can't win it, then it's one of those deals where they'd get just as much out of playing spoiler.
Well, there's no doubt about that, and aside from that, Batesville still, very much in trying to position themselves in the playoffs, and they go in with a 4-2 record, but depending on certain things that could happen and that sort of thing, I think most likely they're going to end up with the 4 seed, but you never know. That's why you play, and both them and Wynn are tied with a 4-2 record. So if Wynn loses, Batesville wins, then they've just got a lot to play for. So I think it's going to be a very, very good football game at Valley View on Friday.
Yeah, I think we've got several good games this week. And don't forget that, in the final week of the season, Arkansas splits their games between Thursday night and Friday night. I've never understood why they do that, but it makes for some interesting scenarios if you have a situation to where, like you were talking about with Wynn and Batesville, if one of them wins their game on Thursday night and the other one plays on Friday, that is going to be on the mind of players, whether they will admit it or not, and coaches too, for that matter. So it makes things a little more interesting and a little more drama-filled coming into the final week of the season. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with Valley View if they can go ahead and close out the perfect regular season, and they're going to have home field advantage in playoffs with their undefeated record if they are able to close it out against Batesville, which I'm kind of like you. I think they will. I think it may be a little closer than most people expect, but Valley View, I think, I think they realize what's on the line here, and even with being beat up and little nagging injuries here and there, I think they'll find a way to pull it out, especially with it being at home. You mentioned a term there talking about small ball. That's kind of the feeling I got on this game as well, because it was just I never really felt like there was one play early on. Trumann had a touchdown called back for what I believe was a contact to the face area. Illegal hands to the face, or I didn't see the exact call on the penalty, but I saw the play on replay, and it looked like it was one of those that could have been thrown as like a unnecessary roughness or a blindside block even. But once that, and it sprung a guy loose for about a 60-yard touchdown run early in the game. When that got called back, it didn't necessarily break Trumann's spirit, but they only came close to scoring one other time in the game. Westside wins 21-0. Late in the, I believe it was third quarter, Trumann had a 4th and goal from about the 3 or the 4 yard line, and the Westside defense built a wall and did not let them in. Westside takes over, goes down, runs a bunch of time off the clock, and scores. And at that time, it was 14-0, so that made it the final score 21-0. And it's just another day at the office, man. They went in, they did what they had to do. Logan McPherson, the guy has just been a machine over the last 4 games. Here are his rushing stat lines. So versus Brooklyn, he had 21 for 294 and 3 touchdowns. Against Cave City, he had 28 carries for 230 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rivercrest, he had 33 carries, 413 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And then this past Friday night versus Trumann, 34 carries, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's insane because over the last 4 games, he's had 1,227 yards on 116 carries.
That's typically a season for most.
Yeah. I mean, if you get 1,200 yards in a season as a running back, I don't know of anybody that's going to say, oh, that's okay. I mean, most people, anything over 1,000 yards for a running back, and most people are like, dude, that's awesome. That's a heck of a season. And we're talking about 4 games here. And let's not forget that he's basically missed the equivalent of 2 games on the year. I mean, he's over 1,600 yards on the year, and 1,200 of it has come in the last 4 games. I mean, that's video game numbers, man. That's Bo Jackson on Tecmo Bowl, to show my age a little bit there. That's crazy. And then he's got 5, 10, 13 touchdowns over the last 4 games as well. So, I would say it's pretty easy to say right about the time when McPherson got 100% fully healthy, because we've seen it in his stat lines.
I just continued to be wowed by it, and when I was talking to our color guy Steve Clayton, we talked a little bit about his stat lines, and I just said to him, and we started talking about those numbers, and I said, every time I keep thinking, he'll have a week where he gets about 160, and which typically would be a great night,
right.
Player of the week night for a normal player, but for him, that would be a very off night at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the stat line he's been putting up the last 4 games, I mean, if he just has a 200-yard game, and let's think about this for a minute. If he just has a 200-yard game, there's going to be a few people walking away scratching their head going, man, Logan just didn't have it tonight. But then you'll look down at the stat sheet, and then, he ends up with 200 yards. I mean, it's just amazing. I don't know that I've seen a player in this area put up those kind of numbers maybe since Derek Lawson back several years ago at Nettleton. His senior year, he was putting up some insane numbers. And I mean, good Lord, how long has that been? Has that been, 12 years ago?
Steve Clayton actually mentioned him since we were at Nettleton the other night. And we had one of our listeners or viewers comment in the Facebook section and said 06.
Wow.
But yes, he was referenced, and then we talked about him walking out of the broadcast booth, and Barry Carlton, the color guy for Nettleton Radio, he was talking about him too. He said, if ever a doubt, just hand it off to Derek Lawson and let him go. So.
Yeah, well, and then what makes this even crazier with McPherson and his stats is that, he's not a one-man show, because, Tyler Ray has had a lot of yardage as well. I mean, he's up close to 800 yards on the season this year himself. So between those 2 guys, you're talking about 2,000 yards right there just between 2 guys. I mean, that is some crazy good numbers. And if it gets down to a point where Westside has a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1, you've got options there, because what are you going to do? You're going to focus in on McPherson and leave Ray to get 2 to 3 yards? I mean, because they're both on the field at the same time the majority of the offensive snaps. So that's a good 1-2 combo right there. And then let's not forget that just because he hasn't been running the ball lately, River Engel is also a threat at the quarterback position as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, but I mean, when you've got a guy putting up stat lines of 294, 230, 413, and 290 as quarterback, all you got to do is turn around and make sure you don't trip when you hand him the ball. I mean, it's just, it's amazing the type of numbers he's been putting up. And, they go out, they take care of business. And you got to give a shout out to the defense for Westside. They pitched the shutout on Trumann. Pitching a shutout on anyone is never easy. And then when you do it in a conference game on top of that's just even bigger. I mean, they gave up 10 points to Rivercrest and no points this past week. The defense has found their groove. The offense is rolling. Another big one this week out at Warrior Stadium for us. This one's for all the marbles in the 4A3. You've got 1-loss Gosnell coming in to take on 1-loss Westside. Talked to Coach Engel a little bit earlier this week, and man, everybody's got their laser focus on, and everybody's ready for this one. I mean, this is, if you are a Westside player, coach, fan, whatever. This is exactly what you want. You want it coming down to your final home game. It's going to be senior night. Everybody's going to be pumped up for that because it's your last time for these seniors like Logan McPherson to, put that helmet on at your home field. And you don't want to go out with a loss. You want to come in and take care of business and bring that outright first conference championship home to Westside. And the way the brackets fall this year, the winner of the 4A3 gets the first round bye and would host playoff games for as long as they last, or the state finals, whichever comes first.
It's well, and for you guys to be able to cover that and to be there to have that opportunity, it's a really neat thing. So I won't lie, I'm very, very envious of you guys as Tubetown, as a broadcast group, that you're getting to be there for something that's going to mean so much, not just for those kids and
sure.
coaches and those fan bases, but really it's the game. It is truly the game of the week, no doubt, and probably the game of the month in terms of having such ramifications in terms of being a champion.
Yeah, and I look back over this is our 6th year of live broadcasts on Tubetown, and I would think this is probably the biggest single football game broadcast that we've had to this point, because
I would think so.
I look back over the schedule, and I've not found a game that we've done at the end of the season that has had this much on the line. We've had it to where maybe some teams have clinched a playoff berth, or they've clinched,
right,
second place and get home field advantage. But and if I'm not mistaken here, and if I am, then my fellow Westside people will correct me, but I believe this is Westside. If they win Friday night, that will be their first outright conference title, I think ever. If not ever, it's going to be in a very long time. So, but I think
certainly in a very long time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't answer that question either, whether it's their first one.
Yeah, I'd have to reach out to someone who's been affiliated with Westside longer than I have. But either way, it's arguably the biggest home game in Westside football history. So we're looking forward to it. We've got some additional things planned if things go favorable for Westside. Let's just say we'll have some extended post game coverage if things go Westside's way. It should be. It's going to be a cold night, but man, if you can't get out there for this one, I mean, why are you calling yourself a fan? I mean, this is what you want for your team. So, that's my call. Everybody who is affiliated with Westside or Gosnell, either one, man, get your tail to Warrior Stadium this Friday night and pack it out. I want to see a full house. I want to, have to run extra tape to tape down my cables because there's so many people out there. You guys are going all in on this split week. You guys have a game Thursday night and Friday night this week, right?
Well, actually, it's funny you bring that up, because at this point, right now in our schedule, we have nothing, and that was just coming in on a decision today. Our goal was to be Thursday night at Tech Paragould for the Battle of the Bell. We've never called a game from Greene County Tech, but logistically, from that standpoint, we are unable to do that. So I hate it. We want to be there, but unfortunately we're not. And we've looked at some Friday night games as well, but at this point we have nothing on the schedule. We are actually saving it all up for in 2 weeks for a playoff game, and then the following week for sure I know we're going to be at Jonesboro. Now that's assuming Jonesboro. We're assuming Jonesboro is going to get the bye,
right? And
then they're going to play in the second round of which would be their first round, but
right
in that second week of playoffs, and we'll be there. So that is still a lot to be determined on all that. We really want to be at Valley View in that first week of the playoffs. So just some things we got to work through and get to in order to make that happen. But there's still more football to be played, and we still got some coverage to do.
Man, sometimes those logistics just they throw a wrench in your plans that you have in your head, because once you start looking at the realistic elements of a situation, sometimes you got to step back and be like, I just don't think it's going to be possible. I feel your pain because we've had to do that on a few things as well. And it's not a fun situation to be in for sure. So I definitely sympathize with you guys on that, but you definitely have some playoff games coming. So that'll be a good makeup.
That's what we're holding on to. And,
sure.
And I hate that because I'm going to tell you something. I've told you this before. We loved covering the Battle for the Bell last year at Paragould. Yeah. And when next year we will have that on our schedule. I don't think there's any question about it. So, it's just like I said, it's one of those things, and
sure.
We're gonna punt and or at least call an audible and try to come up with something else. And who knows what? Maybe we'll string something together for Friday night.
There you go.
At this point, we're just not ready to make that announcement.
I understand completely. And if you've ever been involved with any kind of live broadcast, there are so many moving pieces that go on behind the scenes that nobody ever knows about. And I kind of compare it to like a bunch of gears that work together. If the teeth get out of alignment on one set of gears, it throws the whole operation out of whack, and you just got to stop and recalibrate everything and start over. And that's happened to us several times in the past. And it looks like we may have just handed that one off to you guys this one time. So don't be in any hurry to hand that back, though. We've had our share of those as well. So, but playoff football. You were talking about that. You guys are going to have playoffs, and for the first time ever, we're going to have a playoff game. Got all the red tape cleared, and we're good to go there. We just don't know if it will be on November 15th or on November 22nd. Just depends on who wins this Friday night between Westside and Gosnell. But either way, there's going to be a playoff football game at Warrior Stadium, and Tubetown will be there. So that's a first for us. We're looking forward to it as well. So now we just got to figure out, we got to get Friday here and get this game played and figure out, okay, are we playing on the 15th or are we playing on the 22nd? So, but either way, we'll be ready and have the broadcast ready to go. And hey, Ryan, if nothing else, you guys get to sit back and put your feet up and watch our broadcast this week.
Yeah, I will be glued to that.
Tell us about basketball coming up, man. Media Day's coming up very soon for NEA Sports.
Yeah, Media Day will be November 14th. Trying to absolutely, I've been saying that forever to finalize, but we're absolutely trying to finalize our schedule. That is, it is just so many teams coming in for this event. I'm looking at the schedule right now. We will start live coverage at 7:30 in the morning for the first team to have a press conference. Will actually be the Marmaduke Greyhounds, and that's at 7:40. And as of right now, the last press conference will be the Gosnell Pirates at 5:30 that night. So I have a feeling, though, unfortunately, and I say that unfortunately, and I say that because I want everybody to have a press conference, but there's just some teams that are probably not going to be able to make that. They've got games that night, and I mean, we're shoveling people in and out every 10 to 15 minutes on that stage and off. And so when you got about 45 plus teams coming in, boys and girls, it's quite something, but it is well worth it. And in our partnership with KJ&B, the local CBS Fox affiliate, they always want to do this event, and Suncom will be broadcasting that on the 14th, the entire event. So just something to get excited about, and get an opportunity to hear from all the coaches and the players that they bring as we do a press conference for 45 plus of those boys and girls teams.
There you go. That's getting things. This is, I told someone this morning, when football and basketball overlap, you can cue the Christmas song. It's the most wonderful time of the year, because it's just, if you're a sports fan, it truly is. You get that little bit of crossover there, and it's just awesome. So, well, all right. Well, Ryan, we'll be out there that day as well, and I'm sure we'll be doing some stuff for the podcast, and we'll get to hear from some coaches and all that. in addition to, we still got that big surprise that we haven't unveiled yet that's coming for the podcast. It's coming. And when, we're getting closer, it's kind of like holding that Christmas present out in front of you and shaking the box a little bit, kind of make you think about what's in there. What's the surprise? Well, I guarantee you're not going to be disappointed with the surprise that we've got up our sleeve here for this. So, all right, that's just about going to do it here for Ryan Fletcher. I'm Marcus Carlton. You've been listening to the NEA Varsity Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the NEA Varsity Podcast, a production of Ritter Communications, brought to you by Tubetown and NEA Sports. Be sure you're subscribed to the NEA Varsity Podcast to get the latest episodes. Tubetown is a community partnership of Ritter Communications.